Hello, agentpreneurs. Welcome to, if you can believe it, episode 9 of the Daily List Report. I'm Randy Shiozaki. I am your host. So I skipped the countdown only because there's a delay in going live and you have to see this. So I'm actually going to play a brand new countdown from us right now.
Hi agentpreneurs, I'm Ashley, a communications specialist here at ListReports, and that means that I help write copy for emails, websites, products, you name it. So here's my countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Daily List Report.
How delightful was that? So I've tried to wrangle a few people in the company to share, most importantly, how they serve you, right? So what is their role in this company? And we exist to serve you. So how do they serve you in their individual capacities? And I think Ashley did a tremendous job. So thank you, Ashley, for doing that. I look forward to seeing more of these. We've got a really great show for you today. So we've got Sean Whaling, who I'll bring on in a few minutes here. Sean is the founder and CEO of eCommission. He's got a great perspective on what's going on in the industry from their vantage point. They provide a tremendously valuable service to agents. They've lended $1.3 billion to agents in the form of commission advances, listing advances, and he's just a great guy, great family business. And this is the first time we've actually brought a partner on this show, and I'm excited about that. But most importantly, because we pride ourselves in going to great lengths to find good partners that are like us, that are ethical people, that work really hard, and that have a great mission. And Sean absolutely fits that bill with the rest of his company. So I'm super excited for that. But as always, before we do that, let's go into some of the headlines from today. So as you can imagine, there's lots of news every day. It's not the most positive news, but it's what's happening. And I want to make sure that you're informed so that you can talk to your colleagues, talk to your sphere, and that you know what's happening. So one of the purposes of this show is to make sure that you are up to speed on all of the latest and breaking news. So the first one is a sad headline, quite frankly. So the weekly jobless claim numbers were released today, and that number from last week was 6.6 million. If you recall from the conversations we had last week, week 1 was about 3.5 million, week 2 was about 6.5 million, and we've added another 6 million on top of that. So that is now a total of 16.8 million jobs that were lost in the last 3 weeks. So our hearts go out to everybody who was affected. To put that into perspective, back in '08 during the Great Recession, we lost a total of 8.7 million jobs in total. And we're almost double that in the last 3 weeks alone. Now, what's the positive news? The positive news is that hopefully this isn't like the Great Recession. Hopefully we see a bounce back. They're not all going to come back, but hopefully many of them do. So we've seen a sharp decline. Hopefully once we get through this, we're going to see those jobs come back. But for now, we're at 16.6 million jobs, 16.8 million jobs just in the last 3 weeks alone. Separately, another major brokerage announced some cuts. So EXP yesterday announced a headcount reduction of 15%. As they try to weather the storm here. And so they've made a lot of cuts in compensation to the executives, to the board members. There's no more business travel right now, or non-essential business travel, but they have made some significant cuts. Let's see. There was just a quick little quote from the CEO, from Jason Gesing. He says, "Staff departures aren't easy, but we are doing this with the utmost respect for each and every person. We are grateful for the contributions of those who are leaving us. However, we are confident about our business model, and these changes are the right thing to do to put EXP in a stronger path when business grows." So we saw, a similar sentiment and announcement from Redfin just a couple days ago, and at least in their case, and Geising didn't actually refer to this, but in the case of Redfin, that at least for now with their business model, a lot of the agents were actually going to be able to make more money during this time with the extended employment benefits. And so, once this bounces back, hopefully what this does is help keep as many people as possible in the business so that we can resume when this is all over. Okay, third thing, there's a lot of news today actually. So we had Justin... Justin from our head of legal was on last week talking about the CARES Act and the Payment Protection Program. Applications opened up on Friday. That first allocation was $350 billion. We talked yesterday about the fact that the Trump administration would like to add another $250 billion on top of that. What's happening right now, though, is the banks are inundated. So JP Morgan Chase and Bank of America, as of Tuesday, so this is 4 days into the applications or so, give or take, had 625,000 requests for $80 billion in loans. And so it's tremendous. There's a lot of burden on the companies and the SBA to process all of this, and hopefully they can figure out how to get this money flowing, because every day that goes by is more problematic for people. So that's number two. Number three is that the Federal Reserve is stepping in. So they started to unveil the details of a $2.3 trillion program to help support the economy. What this is going to do is this is going to make massive loans available to what's typically called Main Street. So these aren't Wall Street bailouts. These are for companies that are still relatively large, but less than 10,000 employees, less than $2.5 billion in revenues for 2019. Principal and interest will be delayed a year, so there's going to be quite a bit of time to pay this back. And these loans are going to range from $1 million to a maximum of $25 million. So for certain businesses, there is going to be more capital made available at a pretty low cost of borrowing. Last two headlines for today. One is that Bill Gates, who I'm sure a lot of you have seen the work that he and his foundation have done in and around this virus in particular, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation have committed $100 million in research funding. They've actually done, I think, a really nice job of starting to fund the production of antivirals that may or may not be successful, but in the case that they are successful, production will have already been ramped up so they can be deployed more quickly. He believes that we're still probably 18 months out from a vaccine, and so that's going to take some time. And from his vantage point, he believes that it's going to be probably at least the end of May before the U.S. quote unquote reopens. And I think from everything that we've read and anecdotally from people that we know that are in Asia or other parts of the world that are suffering from this, that have come out of sort of the worst of it, is it takes some time for people to feel comfortable and confident to get back out into the wild. And what form that takes, we'll find out. The last thing is just kind of an interesting story. Etsy CEO says that there's now 20,000 of its shops that are selling face masks that follow the CDC recommendations. So where I live in Southern California, there's now a $1,000 fine if you're caught even driving without a mask. And so there's certainly greater and greater demand for these. And so Etsy is a great place to support some local craftspeople. And so you should definitely check that out. So lots of news today, as every day. We try to find some positive silver linings here and there, but for some time we should get used to the fact that there's going to be probably more of these announcements. But most importantly, what we want to track is how quickly the relief is getting back into the pockets of Americans, so that they can continue to pay their bills and so that we can bounce back when this is all over. Okay. So tomorrow, just a quick plug, we have a really interesting show. Scott Brixton, who's our resident economist who came on last Friday and talked about an economist's perspective on what's happening now, is also a wine expert. And so he's coming on tomorrow. We're going to do our first sort of fun Friday and try something a little bit different, a little bit lighter going into the weekend. He's going to talk about the ABCs of Chardonnay. And for those of you like myself who are not white wine drinkers, I've heard this presentation and it might change your mind. So tune in tomorrow and get the ABCs of Chardonnay. I think it'll be fascinating. And we're working on a great lineup for next week, which we will post this weekend. So I think without further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually introduce Sean Whaling. So Sean Whaling, again, is the CEO of eCommission. eCommission provides listing advances, commission advances. It's a great family business. They've advanced over $1.3 billion to agents across the U.S. They have a 5-star rating on Trustpilot. I got a chance to get to know Sean a lot better, even just as recent as yesterday. And what a tremendous guy, what a tremendous company. And so, Sean, I'm actually going to bring you on right now, and I want you to say hi to our agentpreneurs.
Hello, everybody, and thanks for that introduction, Randy. Hope I live up to it. It's good.
Oh, you absolutely will. You absolutely. It's funny. I like sharing some of the backstory, right? What we were talking about is the fact that both of us like to walk and talk, right? And AJ, my co-founder, he cannot sit down. And so it's such a weird thing for me to do this show seated here. And I think for you, this is going to be challenging to sit in that one spot for the next 10 minutes or so.
It's torture. This to me is like a conference call. My phone is right here. That window is right there. In my normal course of having a conversation, I am up, walking around, looking there and thinking. So if I squirm around a lot, it's just, I don't know. That's how I think.
It's okay. We've already established that your chair doesn't squeak, so that's fantastic. And you've got your hand sanitizer behind her, so you're all set.
Yeah,
I love
yeah,
that. No, that's great. That's great. Hey, Sean, so, when we chatted yesterday, we're going to go through a few different things here, right? But I think where we wanted to start was, I'd love for you to give a little bit of the backstory of how this business started. We love family stories. We love businesses like us that are just super ethical and passionate about our customers. And so talk a little bit about the founding of the company. And when you do that, talk about what we talked about yesterday, where you've been through several of these cycles from, the dot-com boom and 9/11 and so on and so forth. So why don't you sort of share a little bit of your perspective?
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to. So the business actually originates over 30 years ago. And the inspiration behind it, I have to give all the credit in the world to my mom. It was really her idea. My family has been in real estate forever. And it was this is the late 1980s, early 1990s. It was right around the same time that H&R Block just started to introduce advances on tax refunds. And she was at a local mall walking around, saw a little kiosk for H&R Block, came home and said, there really should be a service like that in real estate. Of course, my dad, who was a real estate agent at the time, said, well, there is, agents will go to their broker and they will ask for an advance, and brokers will reluctantly, in most cases, provide that type of service. But anyway, my dad was always one of these guys that just, anytime there was a seed of a good idea or original thought, he never really let it go. And he and I talked a lot. My brother was in real estate. I had just graduated from college at the time and was working for a marketing and advertising company in Toronto, where the business was originally started in Canada. We just started talking about this idea, how there wasn't any independent third-party company that a broker could refer that agent to, where they want to keep the agent happy, but they don't want to dip into their own company cash reserves in order to provide this service and solve a little interim cash flow solution. So the original Canadian company was called Agents Equity. It still exists today.
Amazing.
And we started that business in, like I say, almost 30 years ago, and built it up in Canada. And then in 1999, my brother and I were approached by a large venture capital company to take our Canadian business model and bring it down to the United States. And that's how he and I ended up in Austin, Texas, starting eCommission.
That's amazing. I think that the family story, the inspiration by your parents, really resonates in this industry in particular. I remember, they say, you get wiser as you get older, right? But because we've been through some of these cycles. But my grandmother was a real estate agent, and in the 50s, she was the primary income earner, right? This was such an empowering career, in particular for women. And I remember as a kid growing up, flipping through, she had the MLS book when it was printed as a book with black and white photos. And I used to sit at the kitchen table and just flip through that. And what it does for me is it gives me so much perspective as to how far we've come in some ways, but, the opportunity that still exists.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And by the way, I remember those MLS books.
Remember those books?
Yeah, of course. It was Toronto Real Estate Board. The Trev book had come out. It'd be this thick, and you flip through it, right? But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. 2020 and really when we started the business in 2000, there's like a clear 20-year time span of recollection of things, and you really begin to appreciate how many things have changed. When we started this business, one of our big underwriting concerns was not enough offices would have fax machines.
Oh, that's amazing.
So, I mean, that just, by the way, I'm totally dating myself here, but that was the original problem back in the early 1990s. And agents would apply for commission advances. We'd say, send in a copy of your purchase agreement. And they'd show up at the original company started in my parents' dining room. They'd show up at the dining room knocking on the door with a copy of the purchase agreement. A lot has changed, let me just say.
It absolutely has. So Sean, talk a little bit about from your vantage point, having gone through multiple cycles. Like, what are you feeling right now? What are you seeing? What are you hearing from your customers?
This, we've seen .com crash, we've seen 9/11. 2008 was obviously the one that most people want to compare to, and eCommission was right in the middle of 2008. What's happening right now feels very different than what happened in 2008. 2008 didn't really start in 2008. It started in 2007. Mm-hmm. All the warning signs for that housing crisis, we're all there in 2007. We were dealing with it in 2007. 2008 was just when the bottom fell out, and everybody spent all that time, and 2009, and for some businesses beyond that, trying to recover from it. The difference is it built and took time, and there was another side of it. What we're dealing with here with this COVID-19 issue, just the staggering pace with which things are happening is the part that is just so challenging to reconcile. I mean, the best thing I heard somebody say the other day was 3 weeks and a lifetime ago, things were very different. And that is a very
so true.
3 weeks ago, we were very confidently making plans for things and new marketing ideas and integration partnerships that we're going to put together that have just changed.
Yeah.
Every conversation we have with our customers, with our investment partners, it's all a very different focus and a different story now. And it's a reaction to, well, what's to happen and how we're going to respond to it and the things that we need to do to be mindful of these changes and prepare for it so that everybody's here on the other side of it and can come out of it stronger and better.
Well, I think that's true, Sean. And I think that what's interesting about this situation is, though not everybody's being impacted in the same ways, it uniquely feels like we're all in this together. And I think we've seen that in the reaction from certain businesses in terms of the offices, the offers the services are providing. Something as simple as I saw a thing with 7-Eleven yesterday between the hours of, I think, 10 and 2, don't quote me on this, is offering a free slice of pizza, big gulp, and a banana to people under 18, right? If people are having trouble getting food. And yeah, there's some brand benefits you get from that, but I'm not a cynic, right? And so it's been interesting to see that we're all sort of in this one together.
Yeah, there was a good article in 1000 Watt that said when the sky is falling, everyone gets whacked on the head.
Right.
And that's a terrible analogy in a certain sense, but in another way, it's like everybody is dealing with this.
Yes.
Whether you're confronting the actual virus itself and trying to deal with the impacts of that, or you're managing your business or your family through it, it is an equal opportunity thing that is happening here to everyone, and yeah, we're all in it together, and we're all in it together.
It makes sense. It makes sense. So, Sean, I'm going to pull up a slide that you prepared for us, and this is the one that talks about business expenses. And the reason I'm pulling this up because I wanted you to talk about some of the advice that you're giving, how you can be helpful, and how people can weather the storm. Okay.
So, my only advice to real estate agents who are watching is really just any advice that every business, frankly, is following right now or should be following right now. And that's just a perspective of taking a very hard look at expenses and anticipate that income in the coming weeks and months will be disrupted. And so when I say look at expenses, it's take a look at everything that you'd consider essential to your business right now, everything that you are spending money on, and cut everything that is not essential. Mm-hmm. And that's just the simple view of what every company is doing right now. And when I say cut things that aren't essential, I'm not suggesting that agents should cut certain important things like their CRM. I mean, their ability to stay in contact with their customers and keep them updated with things that are changing in the market, their zip codes and everything else. Agents should invest in all that sort of thing. And in continuing education, we're hearing from a lot of agents that are using this time to actually make sure that they're up to date with all of those things. And any good
great time for that, Sean.
It's a great time for that, right? I mean, it's a necessity, so do it now, right? If you've got a little downtime, why not? And of course, the market has changed so much between buyers and sellers and the reluctance to go inside of properties or open houses and everything else. We're all reading about virtual marketing, virtual tours, really great marketing that has lots of awesome pictures so people can get a good sense of what the property is without having to see it. Invest in that sort of thing because it's not just right now, it's immediate, but it's going to be gradual as we come out of this. People's perspectives are going to change and their comfort levels aren't going to immediately spring back. And to the extent as an agent that you've taken the time now to invest in that stuff to make people practice business in a way that they're going to become more comfortable in, I think just the better.
Well, that's a good point, Sean. And I think it's been a consistent message with us on this show, which is, again, and not to beat the drum here or whatever the right analogy is, but I will beat this drum, right? Which is that certain agents during this time are going to fall out of this business. And there is a unique opportunity right now to double down on what you're doing in all of the right ways and to come out of this stronger. It's all about the mindset. We've talked about this pretty much every day. It's a mindset thing, right? At ListReports, and I'm sure you're thinking the same thing, is we're saying to ourselves, how do we come out of this better than we entered it, right? Not how do we survive, it's how do we thrive during this time. In fact, we have this internal program, we call it Operation Thrive for that, right? That's our mindset. Mindset is everything. It's key here. And I want to transition a little bit into some of the services you provide because I think they're tremendous and you have a great reputation as a lender. And so why don't you just give a quick overview of what exactly it is that you offer? And importantly, Sean, per what we talked about yesterday, is sort of your perspective that, hey, eCommission is there when you need us. Like, we will be there for you when you need us.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm happy to talk about eCommission. One thing I do want to correct, though, Randy, we're not a lender.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you.
Well, eCommission is a commercial factoring company. So what we do is we buy a receivable. In this case, the receivable is the commission that's earned by an agent and a broker. And we discount that commission by a certain percentage and provide advance payment of it ahead of a scheduled closing date. So advance commissions, 30, 60, 90, we advance them all the way ahead of 120 days in front of a scheduled closing date. We've been at this, like I'd mentioned now, for 20 years here in the United States and almost 10 years prior to that in Canada. And we've advanced, almost $1.5 billion in commissions. And the average commission size is a little under $4,000 that we advance. So you get a sense for that being a lot of transactions, right? So we've completed hundreds of thousands of these commission advances right across the country for many years. And it's the sort of tool that agents utilize in those occasional months where their expenses are exceeding their cash flow. I mean, forget the pandemic for a second. I mean, most agents earn their commissions in a seasonal nature, right? We were just coming into the spring market, and a lot of agents I know were counting on that spring market to bolster their cash reserves, and the timing of that with what we're going through right now, of course, didn't match up, right? So, but I mean, the point is, income when you're a real estate agent is not always predictable.
Yes.
And some months agents might make $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in several closings, and the next month zero. But the common denominator in all of that is generally expenses, and expenses necessary to run the business. So how eCommission serves as a resource to agents is to be able to access commissions in certain months where the timing of the income and the expense load don't match up. And so they will draw out one of their commissions early and make sure that their business is sustained in cash flow, going forward.
No, that's great, Sean. I mean, that's tremendous. Thank you for that intro. And I actually had the slide up where we were talking about, how it happens online. You can fund quickly, right, and the range of options. One of the reasons that we call this group the agentpreneurs of ListReports is because we feel like we're a lot of times in the same boat, right? As an entrepreneur, as an agentpreneur, that cash flow, you're right, Sean, it's up and down. And sometimes you have to advance more money than you thought. You got that dream listing and you want to stage it and you want to do all of the things to make it sell for the best price. And those things cost money. And sometimes it's difficult to manage that up and down.
That's the traditional sense of how agents use eCommission and always have. With what we're dealing with right now, I mean, Really, it started with Gavin Newsom's mandate to shut down California. We advance a lot of commissions in California. So this is about 3 weeks or so ago. We started to see an uptick in demand for commission advances. And agents were just looking down their sale pipeline and looking at what was closing and being uncertain, frankly, about what's to come here, and drawing, one or two of their commissions to make sure that they're fortifying the balance sheet for an uncertain, few months potentially, right? And again, that's no different than what a lot of businesses did as this thing all started.
Absolutely. I mean, we touched on this yesterday, but we're doing the same thing, right? It's the prudent thing to do right now is to make sure you shore up your balance sheet and you have enough cash to be able to pay your bills and sort of weather the storm, right? And I mean, we're lucky we're in a really good and strong position, but it's prudent to look at expenses, as you said just a little bit ago, and it's prudent to take advantage of opportunities like this that are available. So, Sean, let's switch gears a little bit to, I'm sure a question is, how much does this cost? So I'm actually going to pull up this second slide here, and why don't we talk a little bit about what these costs look like?
Okay. The cost is going to vary, and it's going to depend on the amount that the agent wants to advance and the length of time until closing. So shorter closings cost less to advance than longer ones. Like I mentioned, we advance up to 120 days. So it's going to range from about 10% to 15%, 17% of the amount of commission that the agent would like to receive. They don't have to advance all of their commission. We only advance the net portion due to the agent after any split with the broker.
Mm-hmm.
And so the agent truly comes to us with how much they need, and they advance that part of it. The cost to advance is added to the amount that we send out. So, for example, if it was a $3,000 advance that an agent wanted to receive, and our fee was 10%, we would charge $300. And the broker would sign a demand to the escrow company or title company that's closing the sale to say, when this transaction closes, of the amount that the agent is earning, redirect $3,300 back to eCommission. Mm-hmm. So that's how we get paid once the transaction closes. The agent gets the money up front, and our fee gets tacked on, and we get paid 30, 60 days in the future.
That's fantastic. And what happens if the transaction falls through? What if the sale cancels?
Right. So those are the two big questions that anybody who considers eCommission have. They want to know, how much does it cost? And what happens if the sale falls through? And the reality is, in this business, and any agent that's sold real estate for any length of time will know that occasionally a sale can fall through. Our experience has been that 10% of the transactions that we approve for funding will cancel. And if that happens, it's the agent's responsibility to replace that commission with a future commission that they earn. Mm-hmm. So we don't go to the agent and expect them to come out of pocket and pay back a commission advance. The only way they repay in advance is through a future sale that they make.
That's fantastic. And I like you said, this is one of the biggest questions you have, right? And you're not in the business of trying to put somebody out of business, right? You're in the business of working with them to make sure that you can provide the capital that they need when they need it. And if, God forbid, the transaction falls through, you work with them on a subsequent transaction.
I mean, agents need to look at sometimes a commission advance is not the optimal solution to an agent in every situation. You know what I mean? Like we don't want agents to advance every commission, and we have underwriting and experience that we'll put into the predictive model. When an agent comes to us, they see a screen amount, and it says, how much are you making? Okay, choose an amount between this and this. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of that goes into choose the amount between this and this. And there's many things that we'll consider as factors to know that this is a suitable advance amount for this agent on this transaction over this period of time. We want to make sure that the agent's going to advance the commission in a very responsible way, that on a deal that we have a high degree of likelihood is going to close. And agents need to think of it the same way. Like if they consider eCommission, they'll want to also look at their pipeline and go, oh, I've got a couple of sales pending. I'm going to use this one to advance on. If it cancels, I've got another one behind it that I can use as a substitution. I always say to agents, if you have one listing and that's it, and you've never had another sale, you probably should advance, and the same goes with if you have one pending sale, And by the way, we still get those advances. The amount that we'll advance on them is just very small, you know what I mean, to mitigate the exposure to any potential transaction falling through. But it's really a two-way street, and we work with our customers that way to make sure that everybody does this, responsibly.
That's great. No, that's tremendous. And I think, again, the thing that I took heart in the most, all right, in getting to know you better was this idea that, we're here when you need us, right? You're, like you said, you're not trying to get them to advance every commission. But when somebody needs that money to continue to run their business, you're there for them, which is awesome.
Go ahead,
please.
Just on that topic about commission advancing, is people will think, well, if an agent advances a commission, they're going to advance every commission that they make. And that just does not happen. An agent on average will advance with us 3 times a year. So it is just on those cyclical, seasonal occasions. We'll have an agent come to us and say, oh, okay, I need to advance this commission. Okay, fine. There's always some reluctance, you know what I mean? To where, I've kept the balls juggling, but I've got this thing and I've got this expense and I need to advance it. Great. I love you guys. You got me the money in an hour. I appreciate it. I hope I never need you again. And that never offends me. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the reality.
Right.
What we see. I understand that. And that agent might come back 3 months later, 6 months later, or 3 years later. Mm-hmm. Or just here's that resource.
And that's the thing, right, though, right? It's that reassurance, right? It's that feeling that you don't have to worry as much about those valleys, at least cash flow valleys in this case, right? That there's an option that's there for you when you need them.
That's right. You know, and I'll throw my final marketing comment on it, and it's
Sure.
tax deductible, which always shocks people, right? Because you know the big two questions they have is how much does it cost, and what happens if the sale falls through.
Yeah.
Layering in the fact that when you actually take a commission in advance, the fee associated with receiving it is a tax deductible business expense for them. So we itemize those costs for customers each year, and include it on the return as a tax deduction.
Well, that's fantastic. So consult your accountants, but that's a tremendous benefit. One other benefit, right? And like I said, this is the first time we've had a partner come on this show, and we do have a relationship with eCommission, and one that we're very proud of. And we don't partner with just anybody. And so Sean and his team are just tremendous people and highly ethical. But we do have a relationship with you guys, right? And so we do have a promo code. We'll put that promo code inside the comments here. We'll share this presentation as well. And if you use the promo code LR30 when requesting a commission advance, you can get a 30% discount. And so there's a array of benefits here. But we've enjoyed working with Sean, and I hopefully you feel the same way.
Oh, absolutely, I do. I love ListReports. I love the marketing that you guys do. I think it's very clever and it's very needed for agents. And the tie-in to what eCommission does, where the product that I described was a pending sale advance, where we'll advance up to $10,000 on the pending sale, closing within 120 days. But we also have this product called Listing Advance, and that's the tie-in to ListReports because it just makes so much sense. So as an agent gets a new listing and they're thinking about, well, what marketing channels do I need to get this thing promoted and sold, and how can I do that quickly? If there is a need for, a cash infusion into that listing to get it sold, we have this product Listing Advance, right? And it ties into the report. So the agent can click right from your site to ours to get all the information that they need to draw out a small portion of the future commission they will earn from that listing to help promote it and get it sold.
That's fantastic. Sean, thank you so much for joining. I appreciate it. I'm glad our viewers got a chance to see you and to hear from you. You're such a dynamic guy, and you've been a great partner to us. So thank you so much.
Likewise. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Randy. Take care.
All right. You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Fantastic. So many thanks to Sean for joining. Like I said, we spend a lot of time finding really good, really ethical partners. And I love the story there, the family business, what they've been able to accomplish here, and thousands of agents they've been able to support, and this idea that they're there for you just like we're there for you when you need us. And so that's tremendous. So many, many thanks to Sean and eCommission for doing that today. Okay, as we always do, we are going to end with something on the lighter side. And so this is a 30-second clip. It's not too bad, but I'm going to play it for you, and you got to watch this.
Come out onto this deck area. Over here to the right, you can see just back out there on a clear day, you can actually see the Alaska mountain range. It's quite beautiful. So we're going to turn this way, and just right around the corner is a set of stairs. And you can see this paint. It's kind of like a textured paint to be a little bit more slip resistant on the stairs. So let's go ahead and head down. So the paint doesn't work.
So the paint doesn't work. What a great clip. So as you're out there doing more and more of these virtual tours, and in this case, hopefully a vacant house that you have access to in areas where you're allowed to do this, just be careful. The other plug I'll give here, which is interesting, is TikTok. So we've actually seen a fair number of agents find pretty great success in this, right? So yes, it's another social media platform, but TikTok seems to be a really interesting opportunity for you to connect with people. So that's pretty tremendous. Fortunately, he seems like he's okay. That thing has gotten hundreds of thousands of views. It's insane. But be safe out there. So again, tomorrow, please tune in. We've got Scott Brixton talking about the ABCs of Chardonnay. It's a great way to go into the weekend. You can increase your wine vocabulary and your wine knowledge, which will be super impressive for your virtual wine parties. And we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.